when Ed rang me to ask me to speak tonight, he asked me to talk about changing Cardiff through blogging. I'm not going to be talking about that, I'm going to be talking about not changing Cardiff through blogging, funnily enough. So Ed said, my name is Rachel, I got involved in the campaign Save the Vulcan in 2008. And I'd like to point out actually that the first Welsh bloggers meetup was actually in the Vulcan in May 2009. I think Shed Blog was there. I'm sure a couple of other people were there as well, so thanks for that. I'll start off not too much the Vulcan, I'll tell you a little bit about me. This isn't actually my first Save a Pub campaign. I'm ashamed to say it's my second. I was involved to save the Pantmawr Inn in North Cardiff, which is sort of on the outskirts of Rubina, I suppose. It's a little pub with quite a rural feel, and some nasty big evil developers wanted to come along and knock it down to build some flats. And I didn't like the sound of that, and the locals didn't like the sound of that, so we duly started a campaign. And I'm quite pleased to say that the Pantmawr Inn is now safe for 10 years, which is a fantastic achievement for the local community there. And my role in that campaign was about press and publicity, and I ran set up a Facebook group, which of course nowadays no campaign is complete without, and also ran their blog. And I quickly realised actually how important blogging is. I think before then, I actually used to have my own blog, which I used to ramble about what I've been up to, and post amusing pictures of me and my friends being drunk in the pub and that sort of thing. But it was at that point I realised how important blogging is, partly because I'm no techie, and therefore couldn't possibly build a website because I don't understand HTML and all those things. And we hosted that blog with Blogger, which I'm sure some of you know of or have used, which is very, very user-friendly and great for people like me who don't really have a clue about such technical things. And also, of course, it's free, which if you're running a community campaign is really important because you don't have any money. And I'll get on to talking about the Vulcan blog in just a little bit, but I thought I'd start by giving you a whistle-stop tour of the Vulcan campaign and sort of how we've got to where we are. You'll have to excuse me for speaking with notes, by the way. I'm slightly nervous just because you all clearly know far more about blogging than I do. So, I first went to the Vulcan, it was over 2 years ago now, with my dad. My dad's lived in Cardiff for a long time, and he was telling me that about this grand pub called the Vulcan and how it was one of Cardiff's last spit and sawdust pubs, and as we all know, Cardiff city centre is being quickly taken over by Wetherspoons and other big chain pubs, which do have their place. I'm not going to stand here and slag off Wetherspoons, but I think it's quite important to hang on to our old pubs as well. So one day my dad took me for a pint of brains in there, and as we walked in, it can be quite an intimidating pub. It's quite dark, you can't see into the pub from the outside, so you don't quite know what you're going to expect when you walk in, so it can be quite nerve-wracking. But we walked in, and for me it was love at first sight, completely. I was absolutely sold. The walls are covered in photographs of old Cardiff, Cardiff's old docks, and in fact pictures of old pubs that have since been bulldozed, a big ship's wheel, lots of sort of memorabilia from Cardiff's docks and that sort of thing. And I think what I liked was the old-fashioned furniture. There's lots of tables with these old-fashioned wooden legs. And the landlady, sat at the bar very relaxed, chatting to the locals. And in lots of our pubs in town now, you don't really get to know landladies and things anymore, just because there's obviously lots of bar staff who are wonderful, by the way. But you don't get to know the sort of family behind the pub. And that night we got chatting to Liz, the landlady, and sort of we were complimenting her on how wonderful the pub was. And we were sitting at the end of the bar, nearest the gents' toilets. There's a little laugh there. I don't know how many of you have been to the Vulcan, but I'm told they're quite a visit, so if you are there, do go and have a look. And that night Liz started to tell us how the pub was going to be demolished, because some big evil nasty developer wanted to come along and build a multi-storey car park. Now, a lot of people have contacted me over the last few years saying, oh well, maybe it's a good thing the pub could be knocked down, because you know what, perhaps they could build a children's hospital or something marvellous like that. Maybe that's true, but you know what, we can't lose the pub to a multi-storey car park, I'm sorry. Anyway, so that night I was horrified at hearing that the pub was going to be knocked down. So I went home, and the first thing I did was jumped on Facebook. Anyone who knows me will know I spend quite a lot of my life on Facebook. Nicola's at the back there smiling. Shouldn't tell my boss that, by the way, but anyway. And so I went to Facebook and bunged in, Vulcan Cardiff or something, and found out that actually there are a lot of groups with people saying, we must save the Vulcan, we have to act now, and all that sort of thing. And so I found, and in fact, I'm just glancing my notes, there was also a group calling for the Vulcan's urinals to be saved. just the urinals, believe it or not. like I say, if you've not been to the Judge Urinals in the Vulcan, it's well worth a visit. Anyway, so I found the biggest Save the Vulcan Facebook group and discovered there were no admins left in the group. So I made myself admin and messaged the group and sort of said, guys, we actually need to do something. It's all grand and everything having a Facebook group, but we actually need to go out and do something proper. We can't just sit around and rant online, as helpful as that can be. So we did that. I then met with some other people from the group and we formed this with a little committee, working group, whatever you want to call it. We then started a petition. In the end, I think, well, it's actually, the petition's still going, it's still online. We've got about 6,000 signatures, I think, now. We held a public meeting, 150 people turned up, and I think I was daunted about speaking to you guys. I can tell you what, standing in the atrium's big theatre speaking to 150 people was quite scary. We also organised a series of postcards to be sent to Alan Fred Jones, who's the Heritage Minister in the Assembly. I quite enjoy annoying politicians from time to time. I think sometimes they need to be annoyed. So what we did, we printed up lots of these postcards, and we got hundreds and hundreds of people to fill them in, and then we posted them around 5 or 6 every day, so that every day Alan Fred Jones's office would receive 5 or 6 postcards, meaning his members of staff would have to open them and respond. After a few weeks, needless to say, I had quite a strongly worded letter from the Minister's office telling me to stop it. It worked, it got his attention. So we amassed this petition of, it was 5,000 signatures, I think, at the time, which we handed into the Welsh Assembly's Petitions Committee, which I didn't know existed until a couple of years ago. And we held, a big sort of demonstration, I suppose, outside the Senedd. We got lots of people together with a big banner and placards and things, which got us great press attention, which is fantastic. We also applied to Cardiff to get the building listed. Unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful. Believe it or not, the Vulcan is 13 years too young to be listed. The CADU are currently reviewing their criteria, so we are going to try again in a while. But one of the Petitions Committee recommendations was that the government should pass law to protect buildings of social and cultural importance. They basically said that the Vulcan wasn't architecturally important enough. But we think we've got serious ground that it is socially and culturally important enough, so fingers crossed that law will get passed and we're going to try again. So me and this committee or working group, whatever you care to call it, we started meeting regularly in the Vulcan and found out from one of the locals called Scouse. Anyone who knows him will know that he's called Scouse for a fairly obvious reason. Told us he had this blog, the Save the Vulcan blog. Oh, he said, what are you doing on there? And he said, oh well, I've posted some pictures of the urinals. Oh, great, I said, grand. But he said that actually he was quite busy and didn't really have time to, sort of do it properly. So very kindly handed it over to us. Now, most of the people involved in the Save the Vulcan campaign, we all work full-time, and community campaigning is very, very time-consuming for anyone that's done it. So the next thing that happens is a guy called Chris Latham came along. That's Chris right there in the white t-shirt. I'm going to point and make you all stare at him. Chris came along and was a student at the atrium right opposite the Vulcan, and very kindly offered to run this blog for us. Of course, we bit his hand off because we really didn't have time. And when Chris took it over, the blog became seriously more populated than it had been. And Chris went back and found old news articles and things like that, and really made the blog what it is today. It certainly wouldn't be what it is today without Chris. And I was billed tonight as the Save the Vulcan blogger, which is a bit of a lie really, because to be honest, Chris does most of it, but anyway. I thought what I'd do for the main part of what I'm talking about was to talk about why I think blogging is such a powerful campaign tool and why we've relied on it so much. And I've identified sort of 10 points, I think, which are really important. So what I thought I'll do is I'll go through the 10 points and I'll give you a couple of examples from our campaign and our blog about how the blog's helped us in the campaign. And the first thing is, we've used the blog a lot to host quite detailed information. As wonderful as the newspapers are, and later on I'll say a big thanks to the South Wales Echo because they've been marvellous, but as great as the newspapers are, they won't carry very detailed information. So for example, the situation with the Vulcan is quite complicated with compulsory purchase orders, and St David's too, believe it or not, are one of the stakeholders on the site and things. And there's no way that we could get you know, the local press to really publish in detail how the Vulcan changed hands and why it's in the situation it is. So what we were able to do is kind of give the local press a kind of bite-sized piece that they could publish, sort of a reader-friendly piece, and then put all our really detailed information on the blog so that we could point people back to the blog so that geeks like me who are actually quite interested in compulsory purchase orders and planning applications can go and have a look at the nitty-gritty. And another thing we used that for also was the CADU application, and our CADU application in the end was immensely thick. I don't know if anyone's ever applied for anything to be listed before, but you need to provide an awful lot of evidence for each, you know, section, and we also had a number of appendices, including letters from the Victorian Society and all those sorts of things. So the blog was really useful for hosting that sort of information. The second reason I think it's a really important tool is that it allows your readers to comment and really engage with the content. Jeremy Vine actually has been in the Vulcan twice. He's quite an interesting chap. Didn't think I'd like him actually when he first said he was coming, but actually I got on with him quite well, so that's good. But when Jeremy Vine was in the Vulcan and while the radio show was going out live on Radio 2, we had about 800 clicks over the 2 days, which is really good for us. As we're quite a small, you know, quite specialist blog, so that's fantastic. And lots of people started commenting on the blog. I suppose people probably who hadn't seen it before, but people were kind of listening to the content and then I guess looking this up on Google. And the blog also caught the attention of Brains. Brains have been quite tricky characters over the series, the course of the campaign, but they actually responded to some of the blog articles directly. I assume it's their press team or whatever, but that was fantastic because we were saying, well, we think Brains are terrible because they're doing this, and they were able to respond straight away and say, well, actually, here's our statement, here's what we think. So then we thought that was really good. And the third thing is that it allows us as a campaign team to provide an instant response to anything that happens. Again, as much as I don't want to stand here and bash the traditional newspapers, but you know, obviously you need to wait sometimes. The newspapers will publish the next day. Well, in the age that we're living in, you need to be able to respond immediately sometimes. So when the local authority or when you know, various people have made statements, we were able to just go on the blog and say, right, well, you know, look, Council Leader Rodney Berman says this, and here's what we say in response. So that's fantastic. We've also had, I don't know how closely you've all been following the campaign, but we've had quite a number of celebrities that come to the Vulcan. Of course, a lot of the time politicians and celebrities do like to jump on bandwagons, but you know what, that's fine with me because it gets us back in the papers, so I'm quite happy. We've had, you know, Nick Clegg, Ken Clark, Steve Anns, Don Immerdale, there's a whole Lembit Opic. We've got a photo of him in a t-shirt, that's on your flyer somewhere. And you know, it meant that we were able to, you know, when Ken Clark came along, we were able to go on there and say, you know, well done Ken for coming and have a pint and supporting us, so that was fantastic. And we also won Camera's Pub of the Year 2009, so again, we were able to straight away go on our blog and say, fantastic, thanks very much Camera, marvellous. And also a guy called Jonathan Adams, he was the architect of the Wales Millennium Centre. He's got in touch with us, and he has basically said that he sees no reason why the developer can't build around the pub. Again, if you've been there, it's very small. It takes up a very small little plot of land on this big car park. So again, when he made that statement, we were able to provide an immediate response, which is fantastic. The other great thing about the blog is that, of course, we can host images, videos, audio files, and things like that. And again from Chris, Chris posted some great videos, and one of which is there's a Welsh indie band called Future of the Left. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but they filmed one of their music videos in the Vulcan. And if you've never seen a real life donkey inside a pub before, the video is well worth a watch, I can assure you. It's very strange. And at the end, thinking of photographs, there's an artist called, let me get his name right, Glenn Davidson, who's in a project called Art Station. There's lots of nods going on in the room, where you could send a text message and your text message would be projected onto the Vulcan. So we've got some fantastic photographs of the pub, and people have texted in things like, don't be stupid, save the Vulcan, and all those sorts of things. So that's fantastic. And in terms of audio files, back in March last year we had a string quartet called the Orion 4 play at the pub. It's quite bizarre watching a string quartet in that kind of surroundings, but weirdly it worked really well. And the night was from Beethoven to Britney Spears, and then they did actually play everything from Beethoven to Britney Spears. It was fantastic. So we were able to host audio files from that as well. And of course we were able to post links like the BBC iPlayer to listen again to Jeremy Vine talking about the Vulcan. And also, when we gave our petition to the Welsh Assembly Petitions Committee, myself and Graham from the campaign went to the committee, and we were able to give evidence, in person, which is great because you could watch it live on Senedd TV. I didn't even know Senedd TV existed, but it does, I promise you. And the fifth most important thing about the blog is mobilising support and getting people to take action. This is so important in community campaigns. You can't do it alone. You can try, but you'd be very hard pushed. But for example, when we were getting the postcards sent to the Heritage Minister, it was quite useful encouraging people on the blog to make sure they fill those postcards in and get them sent. We also, of course, posted the contact details of the local newspapers and letters pages to encourage people to write in to the press to express their disgust and such. And we also hosted quite a number of events to begin with to try and raise some money. Again, community campaigns run on pretty much zero budget. So we ran a couple of literary nights, and we invited like Peter Finch, John Williams, Des Barry, Rachel Trezise, and Heather Jones, and the musicians there. And of course, we were able to mobilise lots of people to come along and essentially give us money at those events. The sixth thing is, with the blog, is it allows you to have a single point of reference. A lot of the time we're out and about talking to people about saving the pub, and they say, well, where can I find out more? And I don't actually carry these flyers around with me in my bag, I'm not that sad. So it's quite helpful to say, well, actually, if you go home and Google Save the Vulcan, the blog will come up as the top thing, so you can go around and have a look at it. So that's really helpful. And that was particularly helpful. We hosted two stalls, one at the Plaid Cymru annual conference and one at the Welsh Liberal Democrats annual conference. And that was really helpful because I don't know if you've ever been to a party political conference, but it's all quite hustly, bustly, and everyone's having a drink and a nice time. And when people stand and talk to you for a long time about the campaign, it's quite useful to just say, do you know, actually, go and have a look at our blog because I'm going to go to the bar now. So that's really helpful. And we also, through both our blog and our Twitter feed, we got a lot of journalists got in contact with us, which is how the Jeremy Vine thing happened. That was all put out of the blue, that was good. And also the BBC Culture Show got in touch, and they filmed a little section with John Cale in the Vulcan, so that was fantastic. We also had, I had a random phone call today from a journalist at the Echo, phoned me up and he said, Rachel, he said, this is fantastic news about this letter. I said, what letter? He said, well, about 100 people have signed a letter to Leonard Nimoy, who's Spock, yeah? Calling for the Vulcan to be saved. He said, what a great idea. Well, I've still never got to the bottom of that, so you wrote the letter, nice one. But it's a bit of a mystery to me, to be honest, anyway. And of course the blogs for good old-fashioned advertising. When we held our public meeting in January, I was a little bit worried it would be me in this big, huge lecture theatre and a couple of speakers, but fortunately about 150 people turned up, and we advertised that through both our blog, our Facebook group, and good old-fashioned posters, which are quite effective. And we got some good speakers. We got the local Member of Parliament, the local Assembly member, and local councillors and things, so it worked really well actually. And the blog also allowed us to advertise our Save the Vulcan t-shirts. If you'd like one, just let me know at the end and we'll be able to sort something out for you. The eighth thing why it's such an important tool is it provides a useful historical account of the campaign. Quite often people say to me, oh yeah, that public meeting, fantastic, when was that? Well, believe it or not, it doesn't all stick in my head all the time, so it's quite helpful that I can go back and look and find out that information. And then also, again, when journalists ask you, oh, well, when did that happen? I can't remember. So, you can look back on the blog, which is really helpful. And we've also been able to post, letters we've had from politicians and that sort of thing. And I also, this is very exciting, I got invited to go to the House of Commons and give evidence to an all-party parliamentary group about saving the Great British Pub, which is fantastic. But again, I wouldn't really remember when or why I did that unless it was up the blog, so it's really helpful. The ninth thing is you can engage quite a wide audience with a blog. I've met quite a lot of people who are quite anti-Facebook for one reason or another, which is fine. So you engage all those people who are just, hate the whole Facebook thing. And also you can engage people who don't necessarily visit the pub. We've had quite a few, contacts from people who are just interested in Cardiff history or architecture and that sort of thing, who really couldn't really give a toss about the beer, but actually quite like the pub being there because it adds a bit of interest to that area of Cardiff. So that's fantastic. And also we've got quite a few people getting in touch with us with old family stories. I think we had a woman who was actually born in the Vulcan or something like that. I don't mean in front of the bar, probably in the flat upstairs, but so that's been fantastic. And the 10th reason blogging is so powerful is that it's free and it's suitable for technophobes like me, because like I said earlier, I don't really have a clue about HTML and that sort of thing. So the blog has been immensely helpful, and there's no doubt in my mind that without the blog and our Facebook group, the campaign wouldn't have been as successful as it is. I have no doubt about that at all. I do need to say a big thank you to the South Wales Echo, because really, I do need to take this back and tell your colleagues. The local press has been fantastic, because it's meant we've been able to contact even more people who, those weirdos that don't blog, they do exist. So that's been fantastic, and also we've been able to post obviously the blog link at the bottom of all our press stories, so when people say, "How can I find out more?" well, here's the blog thing. If you want some stats, our blog has had nearly 8,000 visits, which for quite a specialist blog, I'm quite proud of. I'm quite proud of Chris, if I'm honest, it's not really my way really. Now, I am going to end tonight, I'm giving you all a bit of homework. Sorry. Clearly, you guys here are like the creme de la creme of the Cardiff bloggers, right? Or you should be. If you're not, you shouldn't be here. What we're looking for are more guest blog posts on our blog. We've had lots already. We've had some from, various different bloggers, political bloggers, beer bloggers. We've got one from a local politician. And what I really want is you guys to go away and write a nice blog piece about how marvellous the Vulcan is and how important the Vulcan campaign is and all that sort of stuff. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, do you know what, I've actually never been to the Vulcan and all that sort of stuff, well, here you go, I'll give you some ideas, right? If you want to write about economics, your argument is it's madness to close a thriving business during a recession, so that's your angle. Perhaps you could write from an architectural point of view, it's marvellous building, original tiled frontage, all that sort of stuff, which we're losing in Cardiff. And one from Nicola, if you've not been there, they do a great cheese back over the bar, so you could, I don't know, go there and perhaps review that. But that's about it really, guys. I'm really glad I came here. Thanks ever so much for inviting me. I'm happy to take any questions or anything if you like, or I can shut up and go and finish my wine. It's up to you really.